Pardon me for speaking too softly because it's kind of late right now. Most people, including my parents, have slept, and I have to speak somewhat surreptitiously. I've been thinking a lot about something called bottom up. I first stumbled upon this phrase when I was in the student business club called Isaac many years ago. But it was a very famous buzzword, but I didn't really quite understand the essence of it. Uh, it's not only in Isaac, the student club. Basically, this word appears a lot in corporate world, in governments. It becomes kind of trendy in probably the past decade. Um, the reason is because generally the society has awakened, you can say so, because typically very old societies, maybe 100 years ago, most societies in the history are very top down. What does it mean? Which is the opposite of bottom up. Top down is very simple. Top down is literally the simplest modality. Uh, you decide something, you do it, which sounds like a tautology, right? I believe every single person, every single day, runs a top down methodology. You wake up, you decide what to eat, you go to eat it, you decide which spouse you want to have, what company you want to join, and of course, if you are a leader of a business organization, of a company, of a country, you also plan something, you run it. It's a very simple, direct model. At least it seems to be highly compatible to the law of the universe. Uh, However, I think in the past few decades, people have generally awakened and realized that top-down planning actually, as alluring as it sounds, it has it has caused tremendous amount of catastrophe. Uh, the main reason is top-down planning. When you do things in a top-down manner, you always need to have correct foresight. For example, when you are deciding what to eat, you will go to that particular restaurant and you will order it. What if it turns out to be an odious food, to be a repugnant food? Then you make a wrong decision because top-down requires you to plan the right thing beforehand, before even tasting the food, before even joining a company. You have to make a right foresight forecast, or whether this is a right company, whether this person, this girl or this boy is a right spouse. You have to require all this foresight, and oftentimes um, this kind of foresight always goes awry. Things go very wrong. From individual level, many people uh, pick the wrong course and wrong university. Many people pick the wrong spouse. And then in a macro societal level, many business leaders made the wrong decision, made the wrong call. Country also many wrong social policy. Uh, so top down seems to be not working, and recently, for the past few decades, there is a new ethos. The ethos is bottom up, which on surface, it is the polar opposite of top down, bottom up. But what does it really mean? Because it sounds very counterintuitive. Uh, if you think about it, just now the archetypal example, you decide what to eat, right? You think what you want to eat, you go and eat it. What does bottom up really means? If we want to flip this entire mode of deciding what to eat and you go to eat it, you want to go the opposite way. Uh, you want to eat something first, then you decide what to eat, which seems like very preposterous, right? After you have eaten something, why do you still need to decide what to eat? So if you interpret bottom up very literally, things don't really make sense. And that was my experience as well, because in Isaac, the business organization and the student club, I kept encountering people exclaiming, we need to be bottom up, we don't want to be top down anymore. But in real execution, the real manifestation, I always see nothing was happening. Nothing really bottom up, nothing really amazing was happening. Uh, Maybe partly because, again, most people misunderstood bottom up. Maybe it's because bottom up policies are very hard to execute, or maybe it was happening, but it was too subtle. I didn't realize it. So just now I give the example of eating something first, only decide what to eat it, which sounds very preposterous. Uh, if in terms of let's think about something more concrete instead of just something very trifling like what to eat. Let's think about career decision or spouse decision, uh, or a lot of teenagers have to decide what course and what university to go. In these three matters, right, university and courses, spouse and company, could you run a bottom up method or not? Again, I want to reiterate, top down is very simple. You think what companies you want, maybe you do a few search on the internet, you go to career job fair, you read the details from outset. uh, as an outsider, then you have to make a judgment and you decide what to join. Oh, company X is great, I will join it. Again, the same thing, spouse. You have met a number of men and women, be it in university, in company, uh, or maybe applications, and maybe some yeah. Then you have to make a judgment, or whether this man or this woman looks great. Then you make a decision. I'm going to court him or her. I'm going to try to woo her and try to win her as a spouse. And likewise, a lot of students, a lot of teenagers, when they are approaching year 10 or year 11, the final year of high school, they will start to survey a number of possible choices. Again, but all these survey are very peripheral. It's very vicarious. It's not self-experience, because at the end of the day, um, it is very hard to experience it yourself. It's very easy to do a vicarious search. That means you read it online, you interview a person who has done it before, but all the things you have heard, right, are largely hearsay. It's a secondary sources. It's not something you yourself have experienced. So those are the top down methods for deciding what university to go, what company to join, what spouse to choose. But could we really try a bottom up method for those three decisions? Again, if we interpret bottom up literally, it will sound very preposterous. First one is try to work in some companies before deciding what company to join. Try to try to become a spouse of someone before deciding whether you want to become a spouse of him or her. And try to go into some university and enroll into some courses to study before really deciding what university and what course to join. Again, if you interpret literally, all these things are just preposterous. It sounds so oxymoronic. How can you join something only you decide it? Because the moment you join something, join a company, you pick a spouse, you join a university, you have already made a selection. There's no decision making anymore. And that's the trick of bottom up. Is something it is something that looks very hard to execute, but if you are a wily person, you are someone who don't take convention or don't take things by its face value, then you would notice every single thing. There is a tiny back door at the end, at the back, or at the side. It's not clear whether those back doors are obscure simply because they really are, or simply because most people are too lazy, are too unwilling to handle some mental uncertainty unwilling to think, is there a leeway, is there a small loophole that can let me experience things firsthand before deciding? uh, are vicarious research the only way? Because after all, you think about it, right? The best way to get a spouse that is for sure compatible to you is to try it first. The best way to get a really good company that fits your skills, your personality, your ambitions is to try it. Try working in that company. And the best way to get the right course and right university is to try studying it. And this is a trick um, of bottom up. You want to try something firsthand first, however short, and this is a difficulty because generally most universities want you to make a commitment and enrollment of 4 years. Most companies, after you join, they won't like you to leave, and needless to say, if you pick someone as a spouse, you need to divorce them, things like that. This is the trick. But however, so what I'm trying to show is it is if you want to try to be strictly bottom up, it is actually impossible. There's no way to do so. But you can do something not so bottom up, but so again we draw a continuum. Let's say this is bottom up, this is top down. Complete bottom up is impossible. Complete top down always produces disastrous results, so we don't want that. In this continuum, we try to be as bottom up as possible, but since bottom up is impossible, we try to be somewhere nearby bottom up. So how do we do so? Of course, one suggestion is you try to go as many first date as possible, and of course, first date you don't try to do outrageous things like have sex, or you don't even kiss, and of course you don't even hold hands maybe. But first date is like interacting with a man or woman briefly. You can know that person, but again, it is not absolutely bottom up because by just having first date, you can't really experience firsthand and testify whether this person is going to be a good spouse. It is very far away. But again, at least it has some bottom up element. It is at least not like you doing a research from outside, looking at a profile of a man and woman, then you have to decide whether he or she should be my partner. That often produces the wrong result. So going as many first date as possible, if possible, go a lot of second, third date as well, but you can't go too far. Right. So likewise for companies, you might think that it sounds absurd. How can you try working on some companies first? But people are doing it all the way. Is internship, but internship again is quite mild. It's like first date. You can't really know much about the company, but there is a possible way, which is to try to try to work for free for a company. What does it mean? You look at a company product and you try to think whether you can improve it or not, whether you could write a proposal to suggest it. And likewise for students, right, it is very highly it is a bad decision to enroll into a course 4 years. You try to choose some courses that is possible to allow you to switch in the middle, or you try to choose something very general. For example, you choose mathematics, you could specialize into computer science later, you could specialize into physics later, you could specialize even to business course later. So math is kind of a bottom-up weapon because it's so general and broad, right? Once you enter it, even it turns out to be unsuitable, it is still possible for you to make a twist. The reverse is not the same, because if you choose a business course, it's very hard to escape it. You are not admissible into physics anymore, math anymore, computer science anymore. So that is not really a wise decision. So those are some suggestions on how to do real bottom-up things. But of course, I actually wanted to illustrate using a board game I played a lot last time. The name is Catan. Maybe someday I'll talk about that again because I'm running out of time. Catan, that game could illustrate very well what bottom up really is and how could how it is actually a very marvelous way of making decision. Okay, see you, goodbye.